Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely, joined by Ryan Abraham and a man who needs no introduction, Colin Cowherd. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Ryan called me a media mogul. That's really something.
That's what you are. We'll go with that.
I don't know what to call you. I guess you're a media mogul.
Sportscaster.
Media mogul, sportscaster, same thing. But how are you doing? Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. How was your Thanksgiving, Ryan, Colin?
It was great.
Yeah?
You have a good one?
I moderate eating, had 25 people in the house.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good, huge.
Yeah, a lot of family, a lot of kids, a lot of fun. We laughed a lot.
Nice.
Nice.
I had the parents over. We was small, like 7 to 9 of us, and deep fried a couple turkeys. So I put that on
That's right,
Twitter.
you do that.
Yeah, you just drop it in there. It was pretty good, and ate a lot.
Didn't light the house on fire?
Did not. And it was raining. It's hard because usually you can do it outside in like the yard, but now you have to do it like under like the garage door because it was raining. You can't have like rain and really hot oil and frying a turkey out there. So
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
you have to be careful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have a modified version of the Tunnel Vision show today just because we have Colin on. We're not taking live calls. We're solely on YouTube. This will probably be a podcast too, so if you're listening later, thanks for doing that. But first off, Colin, I guess your overall takes of this USC football program. A lot of people have been like, Colin's really quiet. It's strange about USC. Usually you have some hot takes, but I guess what are your overall thoughts of this program now that the regular season's over?
Well, I don't talk about it as much because it's not as nationally relevant. They had a lot of losses early in the year, and my job is to talk about the biggest programs in Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, Alabama, obviously, Tua are huge stories.
Yeah.
I think the state of the program, if you don't know it now, there's not much I can do to help you. I think I think it's a 8-4 program. I don't think it's nationally relevant. I don't think Oregon's a classic example. They play the best team in the conference. In my view, and they get routed at home. They'll open with Alabama next year. That'll be uncomfortable. Last time they played Ohio State, last time they played Alabama, they struggled to beat Notre Dame. I think when they played the best coaches and the best teams, they struggled to compete. Although they were I thought, pretty good this year against Notre Dame. I thought Graham Harrell was a very fortunate hire. Who knows if he can stay? Texas Longhorns have interest in rebuilding some of their offensive staff, so that would not be good for USC. No. But overall, I don't think I have a different worldview on the Trojans than any Trojan fan. This recruiting class is about as lean as I've seen, although they don't have a lot of spots available. They're in desperate need of left tackles in period. Tackles period. The state's not going to provide a lot.
No,
it's another lean year for linemen. That's a trend now in the state of California and out west. So it's an 8-win program. I think they finish. I thought they'd win 7 or 8. They won 8, and I didn't have a problem with Clay Helton being initially hired. He does not feel like he can take them to the next level. I think the level he's taken them to is about this kind of 8-9 win program, which I think for most Pac-12 teams is great. But I think USC has a different standard.
Yeah. Now, you, along with our buddy of the show, Bruce Feldman, both are hearing that Clay Helton is set to return. Now, nothing is official yet. What do you think that will do to the program if they have another year of Clay Helton?
Well, he would be a lame duck coach again because you'd be sitting and waiting to see if he can win 9 or 10 games. If they get beat badly by Alabama, that turns off fans. Yeah. They have some tough in-conference road games. I'm hearing they're going to retain him, and now there's always the possibility that one of the 2 or 3 big boosters throws a fit, and that can change things. But you have a new president, you've got a new athletic director. I don't think I'm being told neither one wants to make a massive move. So again, my prediction on if that happens is a loss to Alabama. People are going to grumble. A couple of tough Pac-12 road losses, an 8-win team next year, and And we're back here again, hopefully not bailing water on recruiting, because next year they're going to have lots of slots available. And clearly in the state of California, the top 25 players, I think they have a commitment from one, a receiver, maybe two. They've lost their connectivity to California recruiting, which is their soul for recruiting. So I don't have a lot of great news. I mean, the program is good enough. They played very well at the end of the season outside of Oregon, but I think USC beating Pac-12 teams not named Oregon in shootouts is sort of understood as the minimum you would do.
Yeah. Now, if you have a question for Colin, put it in the chat. I'll be sure to read it a little bit later. Now, Colin, that's not – if USC fans are tuning in, I think they're pretty depressed after hearing what you had to say.
We're just going to schedule you for the same time next year.
So, in your mind, what's the point of bringing Clay Helton back if we're going to be here at the same time next season talking about the same thing? Is it worth the stability if you don't really have stability going forward?
Well, I mean, is it worth it? I thought Clay was the right person to hire at the time. Whittingham at Utah and Clay were my choices. They needed a grown-up in the room. You'd had young, talented recruiters, but not kind of, Lane and Sark didn't have sort of the stability, I thought, or perhaps the maturity to be head coaches. And so he was a grown-up, knew the program, knew recruiting. I think the first couple of years, it was on good footing. Sam Darnold provided a lot of the heroics against better teams. And I think, this happens a lot in coaching. I think we've kind of hit a ceiling at USC. I think
That's Colin.
I think USC sort of hit a ceiling, and but I don't know. I don't sense the urgency. Lynn Swan didn't sense it. The new AD doesn't sense it. I tell my kids all the time, if you don't care about something, then I'm not going to care. If you don't want to play basketball passionately, then why am I taking you to practice? So if USC doesn't care, if they don't see the urgent need for some changes, my takeaway is, all right, it's your program. I'm an outsider, connected, but an outsider. So, my guess is next year it's going to be more of the same. Austin Jackson's going to be the second tackle taken in the NFL draft. Maybe third, probably second. They don't really have a replacement for him. That's a key position. I think their offensive line. I think USC knows exactly what their problem is in-house. They need to get bigger and stronger. They're fine at receiver. They're actually very good at receiver. They're fine at corner. They're good at quarterback. They're good enough at running back. Safeties are fine. They just don't on that line. They just don't have the kind of players that a Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU. Ohio State, they don't have those kind of players.
Yeah.
The point you made earlier is something we hear from fans a lot, where they're saying it doesn't seem like the administration cares about winning as much as the fans do. And fans will come in and obviously the number one priority is for this team to win a national championship, right? And you're like, well, that's not really the way the athletic department has been acting. I mean, fans have become almost apathetic towards this, where if it seems like they're giving up when it doesn't seem like USC is fighting as hard as they would like them to fight for things.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not like the program's in disarray. It's going to go 8-4. They could win a bowl game, but there's a standard at USC, and I mean. And again, I like Clay. I thought he was the right guy to hire. But I said this, I think, last year or the year before on the show. I think it's fairly apparent that the program's clearly hit a ceiling. So, what would happen if Graham Harrell left this offseason and Texas overpays for him? There's the savior. I thought he was, to a large degree, in the last 6 or 7 weeks, made the team much more creative and much more entertaining to watch. So, I wish I had better news to report. I don't. It's one of the reasons the irrelevance of the program and sort of, I just don't want to be a hammer to a nail constantly. There's what can I say that's not repetitive and redundant? I think the program's hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to USC's offense, we had you on the show preseason, and you were skeptical about the air raid. You seem to be a Graham Harrell fan now. What's your take after seeing this program for a season?
Well, I mean, the air raid can make you really finesse, and I think USC is too finesse right now to begin with. That's why they can't stack up against, superior programs with better line play. I thought it was entertaining, and the sport is making a move to it. I mean, football changes rapidly. Look at the NFL. I mean, between Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, overnight it feels like you can't have a pocket quarterback anymore. In college football, LSU can't stop anybody, and Alabama couldn't stop LSU. I mean, did you ever think LSU and Bama 5 years ago played? It was 6-3.
Yeah.
Now it's 42-38.
Yeah.
So the sport changes, and the air raid, maybe it's here to stay. I'd like to see a more kind of balanced attack, but it worked. It didn't work terribly well early in the season. I don't think it creates the sort of physicality within a program that you want. It's if you go back and look at the last 2 or 3 great programs out of the Pac-12, Washington in the early 90s, the reason they could beat elite teams from the South or anywhere was because of their line play. They had NFL guys all over their line. Best D lineman in the country at the time, Steve Entman.
Steve Entman, yeah, he was great.
If you look at when USC with Pete Carroll could compete, it wasn't because the receivers at USC or quarterback were good. They're always fine. It was because the line play. There was 4 NFL offensive linemen, 3 or 4 defensive linemen.
Yeah.
So, and there's also something happening on the West Coast. This is a theory of mine. Doesn't mean it's right. I would kind of call it the green plate dilemma. Health and wellness is exploding around the country, especially out west. More moms are vegans, husbands supporting moms, eating better. The plates are greener.
Interesting.
And the players are getting smaller on the lines. So what's happening is you're getting a lot of 275-pound offensive and defensive, especially offensive linemen out west, forcing coaches to speculate, can they play at 320?
Yeah.
You miss on a lot of those kids. Linemen are getting smaller out west. We're not doing meatloaf out here. We're not. It's not the gravy. It's not the biscuits like you see in Texas and the South. Again, I would call it the green plate dilemma. Health and wellness is taking over. Kids are shrinking. Also, the West tends to be pretty progressive on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
What you're noticing clearly out west is there's millions of receivers available, not many running backs and offensive linemen. This is a 4 to 5 year trend. Why? Because California kids are smart. The money's in the quarterback play. The money's in the wide receivers. Running backs can't get a second contract in the NFL. Wide receivers, you sign early to a third. So, between players shrinking, go look at the rivals next year, California top 100 players. I swear to God, there must be 35, 40 receivers, 6 offensive linemen again. So I think these are all things that if I was to hire a USC coach, the first thing I would get him is a round-trip tickets to Houston once a week, round-trip tickets to Atlanta. The players are shrinking. USC looks smaller. They're not as finesse. You add the air raid to that with the green plate dilemma. Again, just a theory on mine. I watch recruiting. I watch the size. I watch what's happening around the country. So I think there are some issues here. I don't think all of them are solvable with the current staff, but there it is.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. How do you fix that given that USC is struggling already with recruiting? They can't even really get recruits to stay in California, let alone if you're going to go outside the green plate zone, if you will. You have to go to the East Coast. How do you do that if you're this current staff? Yeah,
they're not struggling with all recruiting. Again, safeties, corners, backs, quarterbacks, they're good. To me, it's a tough situation because Clay Helton may be extended for a year, but in the coaching community is their belief that he's going to get a 5-year extension. So how good are the staffs? Tim Drevno was kind of let go at Michigan. He's available. Unless you just paid a fortune, can you get elite coordinators currently? I think that'd be very hard. So what happens when any coach, is in the eyes of the coaching community, not a rock solid. You're often your best coaching staff is the first year of a new coach because he can go in and say, we've all got jobs, move your families cross country for 5 years, we're in the money. Now it's very difficult to ask a coach who is employed and has multiple options, hey, come out here to Southern California, be the defensive coordinator, and you're thinking to yourself, at max, I'm going to get a 2-year contract. I don't want to move my kids there. Yeah. So it's very difficult. I don't think the staff overall is elite. I think Clay's always been loyal, sometimes to a fault. They're fun. They've got some nice players coming back. They'll win some games. But I think it's very difficult to, at this point, create a world-class 5-star standard coaching staff with some of the speculative nature of Clay's future.
One of the things of winning those games you're talking about, the Pac-12 to me, it's been, there's been some good teams. I think Oregon's good. I think Utah's good. They have flaws. USC is like the third, number 3 team in the conference, which is kind of crazy. The rest from 4 to 12 are almost interchangeable. Have you seen it where there's some good things and some bad things? It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of great teams outside of the couple that are at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think Washington next year, this year's a good recruiting class for the Huskies last year. I think Washington, Oregon, and Utah again next year will be good teams. Utah will pull back. I think the Pac-12's always needed USC. I mean, let's say USC right now was a Ohio State level program. Well, Oregon would be a very good second team. Utah, an excellent third team.
Yeah.
So the conference has always been led. It's like a pitching staff. If you have an ace on your pitching staff, he makes a 1, a 2, a 2, a 3, a 3, a 4.
Yeah.
When Kershaw's in his prime, and you push everybody back down, then Rich Hill becomes a very good 4 starter. Yeah. If Rich is a 3 or a 2, it's not as good a staff. So, I think when you have USC leading the conference and then the Washington, Oregons, and Utahs can fall back, I think it's a very, very compelling, not the SEC quite, but it's a very compelling conference.
We see USC winning like 5 of the last 6, but, none of those teams had winning records. It was just kind of like USC still out-talents everybody. And
in the Pac-12.
Yeah, in the Pac-12. Yeah. So it's sort of like that's what a lot of fans are saying. Like, yeah, the USC didn't really finish that strong. If Jaden Daniels plays for ASU, they probably lose that game. It was,
Zach Moss in Utah.
Yeah, Zach Moss in Utah. So
right.
Yeah, I think that's what some of the fans are complaining about is like USC still, a mediocre USC is still better than most of the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, that's just almost every year of my life. I mean, that Washington in the early 90s was really, really talented. But by and large, last 30 years, Dennis Erickson had an Oregon State team that had a lot of NFL guys.
That was fun, yeah.
Yeah. Ocho Cinco and TJ Hushmanzada.
Yeah, you have TJ on your show a lot. He's good. Yeah. He's really good. I like him.
He does a great job. Nice guy. So, I mean, there are occasional teams that are, that are really good.
They beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. That's the largest bet I've ever placed on a game.
Oregon State game?
You want to hear my story?
Sure.
Let's go for it.
So this was back.
This is like 2000 or something. I forget.
This was back when cell phones were like bar stools. They were these giant things. Remember, they were big and gray. Like
totally remember that.
So it was kind of. So I covered Oregon State, and my rule's always been I never bet games that I'm going to cover. So I covered Oregon State, and they played Notre Dame, and the Notre Dame team I'd watched on TV 4 or 5 times was not a great team. So the Oregon State team that I did cover, I think they were an underdog by like 6 or 7. And I was just like, okay. And I knew Oregon State. I've always been into mock drafts and NFL draft stuff. I knew Oregon State had a bunch of NFL guys. So I go down to the field for warm-ups, right? I'm doing like live shots or something. And I just watch Oregon State warm up, and I watch Notre Dame. And I call a friend of mine in Las Vegas, and I said, how much do you have in your bank account right now? I said I would bet all of it on Oregon State to rout Notre Dame. I said these are not the same level athletes. I mean, I was just watching I was watching Ocho Cinco and Chad Johnson and TJ Hushmanzada, and I was watching these guys, and I'm like, oh, these guys this is gonna be trouble. And so he told me the number, and I said, well, bet all of it, I'll cover you. So I said, bet all of it, I'll cover you, we'll split it, and they won by a rout. So it was, in fact, Oregon State won so convincingly they were showboating at the end of the game. I think Chad Johnson dropped a ball outside of the end zone on a long touchdown. He dropped it at like the 1.
Oh, and they took the touchdown away?
I don't remember what exactly. I remember that play, though. But anyway, the point being USC generally does have the best talent. I think next year, outside of left and right tackle, now there is the transfer portal, and I've been told USC is actively looking through the transfer portal for a couple of offensive line, not acquisitions, transfers.
I mean, it worked with Drew Richmond this year, and if they don't,
he's going to the Senior Bowl, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think and if they're, if they don't get a great recruiting class, you don't necessarily need to fill it up because you keep those open spots. There's usually good players in the portal that. They don't have a spot. And Illinois did a good job of that. They kept open spots instead of recruiting because they couldn't recruit well. And they get a bunch of USC players, some other players, and it's they've won a bunch of games this year. So that's not what you expect USC to have to do. But I guess if you're desperate, you can.
Yeah,
do it.
I mean, well, I think the teams out west are all struggling with offensive and defensive line talent. I don't. I think it's now the advantage is Stanford can recruit nationally, but so because of their academics, but so can USC. And I think with this current staff, it's almost like they see Utah as Georgia, like they stop recruiting at Utah. And I think you have to go. I think you have to go into the South and Houston, Atlanta, and Houston, Atlanta have really good high school football programs. A high school football coach, I was told, in Houston can make $150,000 plus a car. Same in Atlanta. Those are good coaches. Those are big-time jobs.
High school.
High school.
Wow.
Excellent coaching at the Houston high school level. Excellent coaching at the top programs in the Atlanta level. Now, Florida doesn't pay like that. I've covered Florida high school football. The coaching's not very good. But it's excellent in Texas, excellent in Georgia. And you got to go to those states and, have connectivity with those top high school programs because it doesn't take much to figure out. Just go watch all the recruiting sites. There's not a lot of beef Denver West. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Drew Richmond's going to the Shrine Bowl.
Shrine Bowl.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
We have a question on Facebook from Griffin who says, Colin, if you were Mike Bone, USC's newest athletic director, what would you do with the USC football program?
If I was the athletic director?
Yeah, you are now deemed.
Is that on
athletic
YouTube?
director.
It's on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Not Facebook.
That's at Facebook.
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
right.
there's a handful of top coaches I would connect with, and I would negotiate out of the current situation, and I would probably go to a James Franklin, who I think plays big, excellent recruiter. That'd probably be my coach. It's not going to happen, but that's a name that's out there. Matt Rule at Baylor's doesn't have the personality of James Franklin, but he's well thought of. It's tough. I like Clay, but I also think nothing I'm saying is a revelation. This is all fairly obvious, and I have friends inside the program that I root for, and I am told that the recruiting class, as it's seen now, will get better over the next couple of weeks. So there'll be some quality signings, commitments on the early signing date. But I just don't think the program right now is where most people want it. And I think it's a very competitive Los Angeles market. LeBron's in town. Kawhi's in town. 2 NFL teams in town. LAFC is good. The Dodgers are always good. This is a program where people have options in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Mention Mike Trout because she's an Angels fan. So
Mike Trout.
Thank you.
So I think this is a very distracted market. And if you're not good, you get beat by 28 points against Alabama or 30, you're going to lose people day one. So it's you've got to be aggressive in this market.
Yeah.
I think it's what you said is what frustrates a lot of the fans is because you're like, I'm not saying anything profound. It's fairly obvious. I mean, rarely do we see a fan base. It's usually split. It's usually like half of you hate Kiffin, half of them love him. And then after a while they start to go. It's moved so much that the quote unquote sunshine pumpers there's not many. There's some left that are just like, hey, Clay can work. But it's like 95% or more of fans that just don't want him anymore. We've never seen it like this.
Well, I would say this. The most talented people in any industry have lots of options. So what really talented defensive coordinator is going to take a USC job now, not knowing if Clay is back for after next year? He's not. He's going to go with a new staff or somebody that he can get a 3 or 4 year contract. So the staff right now are guys who have been fired, guys who are on the street. It's not to say that the program doesn't have some capable people.
Now, Colin, a name you didn't mention earlier is a name that USC fans have kind of built up to be the savior of the program should Clay Helton be fired, Urban Meyer. Where do you stand on that whole prospect?
I don't know if Urban Meyer wants to coach again. I know Urban pretty well. I don't know if he wants to coach again. I don't know if USC's president or athletic director would be interested. He's really good on TV, like really good.
He's really good, yeah.
He's really good. TV money is easy money. Not for me, for him. I have to be on every day. It's not easy money.
Sure.
No, I mean, he's really good on TV. So for him, I think it would have to be, by the way, he loves my green plate theory.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he thinks there's some validity in it.
He's so smart. Like he went on like with your buddy Bucky Brooks and our friend Daniel Jeremiah. is like a PhD in football. Like you listen to him talk, and you're like, oh my God, he knows so much. Like he'd be an amazing. Whatever
I
he's
mean,
doing.
listen, most super successful people aren't lucky. And when you're successful at 6 different jobs or 5 different programs, Urban's really bright.
Yeah.
And he just understands. He understands the room. He and Nick Saban are the best college coaches of my life. Pete, I mean, for an extended period, Pete wasn't in it long enough. But I don't know if USC would be interested. I'm not sure he'd be interested. Urban's obviously the best coach on the market. He for the foreseeable future, the next 10 years. You know, how old's Urban? 58.
I think so, like 58, 59.
So let's say he'd be willing to consider a job for the next 5 years. He's going to be the best available coach. There's nobody else out there that's better than him.
No.
So he's an A-list recruiter. You know, it's interesting about what's happened to college football. You have the transfer portal, and you have now an early signing period. So nobody has a life anymore. And the sport is not that attractive, perhaps. This is speculation on my part. But if you're Urban Meyer, you've got a nice net worth, you got your house in Florida, you've got a nice job at Fox Sports. It's not like it used to be. You have 2 recruiters. You have to you're on the phone the second the season ends with a sophomore in high school. Is that where you want to be? So does Urban want to do that? You have to really take a deep breath now. The transfer portal, you bring guys in, they're walking out constantly. Players are now leaving earlier to the NFL. It's hard to keep quarterbacks. They want to play immediately, and they're gone immediately. It's not. I don't think it's as good a job as it was 5 to 6 years ago. I really don't. I think the early signing period is going to push a guy like Nick Saban out 2 or 3 years earlier.
If you want to assume that, just for the sake of argument, say the job opens for USC, and say Urban would like to return to college coaching.
Oh, he'd consider it.
Where would you put USC as far as open, or like if Notre Dame was in there, or Texas, or where would USC be ranked as far as those kind of jobs?
Well, that's a good question. I've told people this. I think I may have told Urban this. I said I don't think USC is as good a job as it was 10 years ago. I said the kids are shrinking. More kids out west are bailing on football. The line play, you have to leave the region. If you really want to get world-class players, you don't have to leave the South. Is it a top 7 or 8 program? I'm not sure it is.
Wow.
It's really, really expensive in Los Angeles. Silicon Valley has made California so wealthy. It's egregiously wealthy. None of your coaches. I mean, where can they live? It's hard to get a great staff. I don't know if they're. I don't know. You know, Los Angeles and New York City, with the explosion of tech money, are they really built for college sports anymore? I can make an argument no.
Interesting.
It's how do you get a staff? What is? I mean, you say to yourself, okay, we'll pay our running back coach $375,000. In Tuscaloosa, in Knoxville, that's a lot of money. Here, you're renting perhaps.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a different world. So I think it's a good job, but it's complicated. I was told that by a trustee at USC in the last couple of days. The Clay situation's complicated.
Interesting.
It is. You'd have to write a big check. It's not easy. Lynn Swann extended the contract.
Smart move or not so smart move?
I think it wasn't one of the great executive decisions.
Sorry. Just,
Trolling.
So, and it's hard to say because I do like Clay. I think he's a great human being.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know if USC is quite the job. Boy, when you get a job, you get a job University of Florida. Everybody in the building knows win football games, all costs. Junior college, fringe academics, everybody's in, no state tax. I don't have to pay every coach. I have to overpay for every coach. It's a dream job for a lot of Southern coaches, offensive coordinator at Florida, linebacker coach at Florida. USC, you got to open the wallet. That's why it's complicated. You have this convergence of the cost of what it is to live in Los Angeles and California now. It's exploded. And then you have you'd have to write a big check to replace Clay Helton, a $15-20 million check. So how many times can you go to the boosters? So it's a complicated situation.
The one interesting thing, if you're a USC fan pulling for Urban Meyer, I think the unique challenge for him would be winning a third championship or a championship at a third.
It's like LeBron. It's like LeBron.
Like trying
you
to
come
win
to the Lakers and win a third. It kind of puts you in a class nobody's ever been in. Yeah.
Right. So I think for USC, as far as competition goes, if you make USC good, it's probably easier to win a championship than almost anywhere else. Because you don't have Ohio State, Michigan, or LSU to your Alabama or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think Ohio State and USC are very comparable. Is that when you're really rolling, you just have better personnel than anybody in your conference. I mean, you look at by the way, Clemson right now feels like Pete Carroll's Trojans. I mean, they don't have nobody can compete in that conference.
Yeah.
So, but at the SEC, it is harder. The Big 12, the Big 12 isn't that deep, but because of the style of the play. You go on the road to a Lubbock or a TCU, and you're spreading the ball out, and you wake up and you're down 28-7.
Like what happened?
Yeah, I mean every game's a shootout. So Oklahoma's job, outside of the SEC, generally speaking, there's 4 or 5 programs. Clemson's very lucky because Florida State's in the tank. If you look at the history of Florida State and Miami, they should be giving a big pushback to Clemson. They're not.
Yes.
So Oklahoma usually has the Texas game, and then little Oklahoma State TCU pushback they can roll. So I think it is USC when they're rolling, and again, it's not. The program is not in rebuild mode. There's a lot of talent here. Wide receivers. Some spectacular wide receivers, defensive backs. There are some players here, but it's a program that needs to get bigger and stronger. And I don't see fundamentally those players in the program right now. Jay Tuafeli is very good. If you're a Trojan fan, you cross your fingers that he doesn't leave early. If he leaves early, they lose their best defensive lineman and Austin Jackson, their best left tackle. And I don't think they have somebody in the room to replace either.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, something that Ryan talks about a lot is that if Clay Helton is retained, I know USC fans are on the edge of their seats, you'll kind of lose USC fans for life. Now, I know that's kind of a hyperbole, but what do you expect from USC fans? Because it seems like apathy is at an all-time high from the fan base.
I don't know. Life is a long time.
Yes.
Losing people for life.
Yes.
Doesn't everybody hook up with their high school girlfriend on Facebook 30 years later? So
is that a proven fact?
No, it's just like Facebook. You go back and talk to people. I mean, we all have fond memories. I think if you grew up loving USC, it'll reel you back.
You'll come back in. But I do feel like people have drifted away. And for the USC UCLA game, that was not a full house. There was no. It was.
Listen, this is not Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
When Pete Carroll was here, there was no NFL teams. We're not only going to have an NFL teams, 2 of them, we have this remarkable stadium that's going to be state of the art. And Steve Ballmer's going to build his, and Kawhi and LeBron and Paul George and AD, and this market is now. And you didn't have the LAFC. Yeah. I'm a season ticket holder of that.
Nice.
So I have so many choices. You've always competed against the beach and the shopping and the mountains and the lifestyle, but now you got 2 NFL teams, a soccer team. So apathy. You have to be good in Los Angeles. That's the challenge. You have to be good. And USC is the standard for USC is here, and right now they're here, and so they just don't. You can talk yourself out of going to a lot of games unless you're a diehard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Alrighty, we want to be respectful of your time, Colin. But any final thoughts? Anything we didn't cover that you'd like to say?
Next time, I would like you got to get a coffee maker in here.
I'm sorry.
So
Agreed.
Ryan doesn't, folks. Ryan eats literally gets up in the morning and eats candy bars.
No, that's not.
You like desserts. He loves desserts.
Put him on the spot.
I don't eat desserts much, and I love coffee. And Ryan, I like Gatorade.
Okay.
Gatorade, it's good for you.
It's not a sponsor for us.
But it would be nice if you could.
For you.
If you're bringing me all the way down here to Redondo, if you could have a nice cup of Joe, a steaming.
We have a microwave. I brought Keely leftovers of my
you didn't
Thanksgiving.
bring Colin leftovers, though.
He's.
Redondo
weird.
is not a
vegan
great.
now?
Yeah, she is vegan. I'm not.
Okay, so you still.
See?
The new so you guys go check it out.
Herd Burger.
The Herd Burger is pretty awesome,
Yes.
and so he was telling me about. We went to the grand opening. The burger was really good.
It's in Delamo Mall.
Delamo.
It's called a Brew Hall. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But the ice cream sandwich might be like
is.
that could be like the best part of it. It was so good.
Yeah, that's our number one seller. No, that's been great.
That wasn't just for me, right? You knew I
No,
like those things.
no,
Okay.
no. It's the Brew Hall, Delamo shopping area, and East Circle Drive. It's been great. It's fun. I go there all the time. So I take my kids all the time. The burgers are great. The Herd Burger, the Wise Guy salad, and the ice cream. Boom, boom, boom. Out of this world.
It's really good. We talked about doing a USC meet and greet gathering event.
We
there,
have talked about that. Again, if you get a coffee maker in here, maybe I would commit to that.
All right, we'll get a coffee maker.
So now this is on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah, YouTube. We'll put a podcast up a little bit later.
So
too.
it's YouTube, and then it'll be a podcast.
Yeah.
So, okay. I just want to know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Where in
That's
the galaxy
the
am
ether.
I?
The ether.
So you're not doing your show. So you didn't do your show today.
No,
right?
I get a Thanksgiving break. So they don't put me on Thanksgiving because they put the other two shows before me on. But by the time I come on, the NFL game's on. So
okay.
I'd be competing against a Fox NFL game. It's going to destroy our audience. Then Friday I take off. It's kind of the midway point for me in the football season. Fox has the Super Bowl this year. FS1, we're up 30% this year. FS1's still growing like crazy.
That's great.
Fox Sports Radio show's growing like crazy. I'm very lucky. Knock on wood, I've got great bosses, great support, incredible staff. Most fun I've ever had in my life. Hopefully I can do it for another 10, 15 years. So, again, if you commit to coffee, I'll give you these kind of rambling sort of career updates.
So this is the kind of guy Colin is. It's his day off. He doesn't have to talk sports, and he texts me like, "Hey, we should talk some sports." So
It's a
you want to do it on your day off.
It's a holiday edition. I'm only 15 minutes down the road, and you let me talk about Fox Sports and Herd Burger. So we're all good.
Of course.
Perfect. A perfect trade. Really quick, someone wants to know what round do you think Michael Pittman's going to go?
Oh, that's a good. I love the mock drafts.
I know you do.
So I like Michael Pittman a lot. I think Austin Jackson's the second best tackle. There's a tackle out of Georgia that I think is the best tackle. I think Austin's really athletic, so he'll go mid-first round. There's about 3 really good tackles. I think Austin's the second or third best, so he'll go mid-first round. I was just talking to a scouting director last week, and he was asking me, we both agree it's the best wide receiving core I ever remember coming into the NFL. There's like 35 receivers that you could make an argument are draftable. And I told him, I said, Michael Pittman is a really unique. I would love to see Sam Darnold and the Jets get him because they have 2 third-round picks. I think he'll probably go because there are so many wide receivers. I think people will wait on them. You have very few good offensive linemen, maybe 8 to 10. So those guys will get gobbled up perhaps, although most of them are second and third-round talents. If I was the New York Jets and I could figure out my offensive line with the first couple picks, early third round, Sam Darnold, I would get Michael Pittman. I think he's an early third pick. He's strong. His dad was strong. He runs angry. He's hard to tackle. He's strong. He's faster than you think. He's got a big, durable body. That's an NFL body. He'll clean up his routes, but I think he's a really interesting player. I like him a lot. He is an aggressive, his dad had some great years in Tampa. His dad was tough.
Did you cover him then, or when you were in Tampa?
No, but his dad was. In fact, I was talking about this to a GM about 2 days ago about Pittman, and I said, "Remember his dad?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I remember his dad. His dad was tough. And Michael Pittman's tough." So I think he's a really interesting player. I like him a lot.
Interesting. Okay.
Cool.
Well, that's going to wrap it up. Colin, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Did I tell you about a coffee maker?
Yes. You told me.
Very
We'll get a
People
coffee.
stay on him about that coffee maker.
Yes,
Thank you.
they're gonna now. They're gonna tell
Yep.
get a coffee
Colin's
maker.
getting things done. I appreciate it. Good stuff. Well, that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back on Sunday. We might know more about this whole situation,
Yeah.
so make sure you tune in.
We will
7
know
p.m.
where USC's
on-
bowling. I think at the time.
Yeah, true. Maybe Clay Helton too. We'll see. Make sure you tune in 7 p.m. on Sundays. But that's going to wrap it up. That's Ryan. That's Colin. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all on Sunday. Bye.
Bye bye.